Hello, Jasmine. Okay, so I'm looking at all of these together and then I'm going to show you them side by side. So obviously for these ones, these two are really, really close in the kind of photograph they are, but this one has more color. So for that reason, I would say to choose this one rather than this one. Um, but it's possible, depending on what kind of editing you do, that you could pull some color out. This one also is just darker in contrast, so it'll be a little harder to lighten some things up to pull color. But I think either of these are interesting to use. In the end, I think it just comes down to what you want to pair. So I'll kind of talk about some different approaches. This one, for the most part, it has a fair amount of color, but it's a lot of blues and grays, right, primarily. And then you obviously have reds and yellows, a little bit of blues. So as I'm looking through the other ones, I'm kind of checking like, okay, are the yellows the same? Not quite. For example, like the cabs are a little bit more orange. There is some regular yellow, but what you could do then is over here, you could make this yellow that's dominant match the cabs. So that could be something to match up. There's also some blues that are repeating, like this one here is basically the same as this one here. The reds, like this one is the desaturated red overall, but it's the predominant red there. So it could be a situation where then you come into this photograph and you desaturate the reds, or at least some of them, so that there's a strong matching happening. The grays in the buildings, there's quite a bit of difference, I would say. Again, more towards blues and greens. This one is a bit almost more towards greens, not as much blue. So there is a possibility of matching either in the lower area for the cement or up in the buildings for some matching. And then this one is darker overall. It's possible if you lighten it up with levels, which you'll find out about as you've done a little bit of it already. There is a possibility again for some more colors to pop a little bit better. But overall, again, we've got a lot of grays we could match, and then some of the colors over here. And then finally this one, it's a lot lighter in value overall just because it might be something where you choose to crop it, depending on most of your photographs seem quite, they're quite tall. But there might be a way to crop something like this so that you can take that fence area out. In the end, maybe you crop it something more towards like that. And then we will notice things a little bit differently. When you have more visual noise, sometimes you just end up not noticing certain details. So, orange in this one is obviously a dominant color, but it could switch to something else. That's what's can be fun about editing. So I'm going to look at them now side by side just to kind of talk through how to approach it. So, I stacked these two just because they're so similar. But part of the whole process in deciding which ones to choose is also thinking through how they're going to behave next to each other. That's really important for this particular project, since in the end you will be placing them next to each other in whatever way makes most sense for the photos. So if you decide to choose a horizontal, even though the rest of these are vertical, you can do one of two things. One is you could crop it into a vertical. You could crop it into a square. You could crop all of them into squares. That's possible. It's probably harder to crop the verticals into horizontals to make them make sense. And then the other possibility you can do with these is, as you probably saw in the little diagram I have of all the many possibilities of how to arrange photos, would be that this one would be in the middle because it's the most different, and you would flank it with two verticals. But when you flank them, basically the middle one would be matching the heights of the two ends. So this isn't quite the perfect representation, but hopefully you get the idea. Now, what I would say to do at this point, now I'm not sure if you're on a Mac or PC, but this is a little, you can do this wherever you want, but this is how I do it. So this is my Finder window. You can kind of just see it's just this. And then down at the bottom, if you have this turned on, you get a little icon view. You can shrink and enlarge. And I just find it really helpful to be able to drag and drop. You can always pull them into another document and move them around, but this is just really simple. So what I do for that is I make sure I'm viewing them as icons. And sometimes you'll have to make sure you're showing the path or status bar, because you can see that if I hide that, then that ability to change the icons goes away. So you do want to make sure you show the status. And then again, depending on how much you want to see on screen, you can just drag them and drop them around. So just in case, if you're curious about how I'm doing this, it's real low tech. Okay, so at this point, what I would say is, yes, we know that you can do a lot of editing for lighting, but maybe just put some next to each other and see what calls out. I think because you have architecture in all of these ones, you'll have to be a little bit careful about which shots you put next to each other. You don't want to have something that feels too repetitive. So for example, this one with the bridge in it, it's like you have a tunnel view, another tunnel view, and then you know, does that mean that your other one should be a tunnel view? Like, does this one feel a little bit more similar? You know, probably. And then there's something similar-ish happening in all of them. Or do you kind of mix it up? Let's take these away and put these two up here side by side. You know, this one overall, they're probably a little bit lighter. You get more sky, and they're just a little bit brighter than these two in particular. And so, you know, I think that anything like that could make sense together. You would just have to be very specific about which colors to try to pull. You know, your skies are pretty quiet, but you know, that blue that's in there, if you were able to saturate that a little bit more, that might be a color that would show up here, or you can tweak it to match it. Basically, right now, I feel like these are similar enough. They each would have to be tweaked a bit in their own particular ways, but these ones are probably less about contrast change. But if we look at these again a little bit closer, there's full black in some of these, and they're almost pure white in some of them. Let's see, I'm just going to go through them from the top. So this one, again, is kind of overall maybe a bit too dark, but there's a little bit of color, and then we can certainly see some sky, and you can suss out a little bit more blue. We've got some oranges, full blacks again. This one also, I forgot to mention, yes, has some full blacks. And then all of them seem to have full black. So that, in terms of contrast with the darks, I think you're okay. You would have to affect your middle values, which is in the levels, and then your brightness overall, like that bright white, you'd have to adjust. But I think overall you've chosen a set that very much could work together. It's just about what colors you want to pull and what colors you want to maybe quiet down. So I'm going to pull these out just for a second so you can kind of see what that might look like if you had all verticals, or, you know, verticals that could become squares. So in this case, these ones are a little bit more open, They're not like a particular V shape like the other ones have. So if we had to choose something to go in the middle, you know, which one of the other two makes sense? Like, I feel like, okay, they're different enough that could work. I would say probably this set over this one, just because this one you'll have to lighten up quite a bit, and that might skew things a bit more than you like, but that works too. So basically you have a good set of things to choose from. I don't know that you can really make a wrong decision. Just be aware of colors that you can match, and remember, you can also change them entirely. Like that yellow could become a green, and then you know, you can play with the colors. They don't have to remain their original colors at all. So I hope that helps in thinking about it. I just try to give an overall, here are many possible ways to approach the project. As you start to edit a little bit more particularly, then of course you might want to send me your Photoshop files if you're having trouble with any particular kind of matching, if you want to get it done before you would see me in class. All right, good work in your choosing. These will be good to work from.